Chris Eubank Jr.'s highly anticipated rematch of Conor Benn was finally confirmed this week, with the pair set to do battle again at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on November the 15th. For more on this, delighted to say Eddie Hearn joins me now. Eddie, Eubank Jr., Eubank Jr. Benn 2 has been confirmed with a new date until we will see the same weight limit required, do you think, in the rematch?
Yeah, everything the same. I mean, obviously, we had plans for September 20th. Eubank wasn't ready for that fight, but ongoing negotiations with him and confirmed his participation for November 15th. Back at Spurs, back at the home of probably one of the greatest fights we've seen in the last decade or so of British boxing. Expect round 13. These two ready to go at it again. And we believe our man Conor Benn will be victorious this time. I think he took a little piece of Eubank's soul that night. It was a night where both of them had to go to the trenches. It was an incredible event, and this time will be no different. Gunning for our man Conor Benn to end this fight inside the distance and stop Chris Eubank November 15th at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Now, Johnny Nelson is backing Conor to win, and I'm sure you agree with Johnny. And why do you think he will get the revenge over Eubank?
I just think sometimes you have to look at the youth element, and don't forget, going into that fight, Conor Benn was very inactive. I mean, obviously, he'd had just a couple of fights over a couple of years, and they were really 10-round fights at short notice. So this time goes into this fight with a huge amount of momentum. And also, like I said, what kind of toll it took from the fighters. Eubank is in his mid-30s. He's coming towards, I think, the end of his career. And that night, he was incredible. He dug really deep. He walked through the trenches to go to war with Conor Benn. And he will be called upon to do the same thing on November 15th. This isn't a fight that Conor Benn will go into with a different game plan, to outbox him, to manoeuvre off the back foot. Conor Benn will be looking to start at round 13. He will meet Eubank in the middle of the ring, and he will demand a war from the opening bell. And I believe this time we'll break the opponent down and beat him. And I think Johnny Nelson probably says that because he knows what both fighters went through physically in that fight. And as you become older and further in your career, you've got to ask yourself, how many times can you go to the well? Conor Benn's like the Duracell bunny. He's up and down the well. He just wants to be at the bottom of the well every time. He wants war, and he loves it. And for Eubank, I think part of him will start to question whether he wants to go back to those places again on November 15th.
Saw two questions in one here. So do you think September was a bit too early then, with what you're saying, maybe from the Eubank side? And if he lost, do you reckon he would consider retirement, Eubank, this time?
Yeah, I mean, maybe he calls for the rubber match, the trilogy, but, Eubank is in the back end of his career. For Conor Benn, we have dreams and aspirations to see this man go on and follow in his father's footsteps by winning a world title, going back to his original weight class of 147 pounds. But, the opportunity of this fight, and of course, financially, this is a great spot for both guys. But the reality is, Conor Benn wants revenge. He's not thinking about anything about a payday. He lost the first fight. That was his first defeat. He believes he can beat him second time round. And that's what he's gunning for. He's going into training camp to beat Chris Eubank Jr. And he wants to set the record straight. For Eubank, both guys, if Conor wins, I think he still proceeds to fight for a world championship at 147, win or lose. If Eubank can win, maybe he sets himself up for a Canelo Alvarez fight in 2026. Who knows? But, this fight isn't really about, manoeuvring a fight. This is just all-out war. You saw it first time around. This is pride. This is legacy. This is family bragging rights. And the first fight was epic. The second one will be epic again. And this time we've got to change the result.
Did you wake up and think, oh, right, it's on, blimey? Because I've spoke to Conor and he said, no, it's done now if we're not having September. Then all of a sudden, it's back on.
Yeah, I mean, look, His Excellency came out and said, right, it's off. Eubank's turned down September 20th, and obviously the talks continued with Eubank. Everybody knows how big this fight is. Let's remember, it did 70,000 first time. The pay-per-view numbers were through the roof. And that was only with Senior turning up on fight night. Now you're probably going to have him involved in the whole promotion. You've seen fight one. Fight two will be even better. This is going to break all kinds of numbers. And therefore, people were keen to make it happen. And, fair play to Eubank. He was true to his word. He's running it back. And we were ready. Listen, Conor was ready if it was a week after the first fight. it didn't matter. He was ready for September 20th, and he'll be more than ready for November the 15th.
Well, I've got to ask you about AJ's next move. We had JakePaul's manager here last week, and he's open to the fight. Any developments on that?
Lots. I mean, this bizarre world that we live in, I think JakePaul is absolutely the front runner to fight AnthonyJoshua next. I'm here in New York for meetings about that fight. There's an open dialogue between myself and Nikisa, an MVP. I don't know what to tell you, Bridgie, other than it's mental. I mean, I can't sit here and tell you this is a 50-50 matchup. The whole thing is bizarre. I think it's extremely dangerous for JakePaul. I've got the general feedback is the boxing world saying, please, AJ, go in and evaporate this young man from the boxing world so we can all get on as normal. You've got JakePaul fans thinking bizarrely they can beat AnthonyJoshua. And the most bizarre thing out of everything is that JakePaul genuinely believes he will beat AnthonyJoshua. I think that's the only reason we're going to see this fight. Because JakePaul and his merry men are telling him that AJ, his punch resistance has gone. This is a great time to fight him. I'm telling you, be careful what you wish for, because this is the most dangerous thing. This is like tuning in to watch David Blaine. When he's in the box and you're wondering whether he's going to get out in time. This is the kind of thing when you tune into his fight. And I've told Nikisa, and I've taped JakePaul, this ain't David Blaine. This is going in with one of the most fiercest punchers of our generation. And by the way, if you go in there thinking you're going to win, that's even more dangerous. And I know commercially this fight breaks all kinds of records. And I don't even know what's going on to know that we're even sitting there negotiating this fight. But I truly believe you're going to see it at the beginning of 2026. And, I don't know what else to tell you. But, for AJ, who says to me, you want me to go and knock JakePaul out? No problem. And that's where we sit.
Wow. Wow, brilliant revelation. Wow. Right, away from boxing, we've seen AJ talking and potentially moving into football agency with yourself. Now, I know you had a bit of football with your dad back in the day of Orient, but tell us more about that.
Well, listen, normally it's me with the big mouth. I end up saying something and AJ goes, why are you... And this was just a series of conversations over the last... Me and AJ have been looking to go into football management for probably the last 3 or 4 years. Because of his career, it just never really moved in time. Obviously, now, as he approaches the back end of his career, the conversation came up again. And then, of course, he posts on his Instagram that we're starting a football agency. And then it's just like, media, players, clubs, sponsors, everyone's all over it. So we see the potential behind it, and we want to get it right. We feel like everything that we've accomplished and experienced within the sporting world, the way in which we guide athletes, the way in which we help them look after their legacy, look after their finances, and make sure that they can perform at the highest level, and the context that we have within the sporting world, we think we could be extremely successful in that space. There's a lot of work to do, but I believe 2026, you'll see AJ and myself having a crack in the football world. It'll be a lot of fun.
I can't wait.
We don't like losing.
I look forward to seeing you in football. Right, Tyson Fury kicking his heels in Morecambe. Is there no chance him v AJ? Is that gone? I mean, what? I know you don't promote Tyson, but you know him. So what do you reckon?
I believe that fight will happen, but I've said that before. So, for us, if this bizarre event comes around with JakePaul, we're happy to take that fight February, March, and then move on and fight Tyson Fury back end of the summer. And that'll be a great year for AnthonyJoshua. It's going to come down to Tyson Fury, but, for us, any conversations, not just with JakePaul, but with His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh as well, he's talked about making that, kind of 2-fight option with JakePaul and Tyson Fury. And, for AJ, that's a fight that's very important to him. But it's going to take Tyson Fury to want to get back in the ring. I do believe he'll reach that point. But, that's over to him. I think the days of calling him out are long gone. We hope he's happy. And if that involves boxing again, great. I think both guys are still in the primes of their career. And to see an AJ Fury fight would be spectacular for everybody involved and for British sport.
Finally, another fighter who's meant a lot to you over the years is Katie-Taylor. Is there any plans of a farewell in any venue? What's the latest on her?
I don't know. I think after the last fight with Amanda Serrano, it's the first time probably I've heard her in a press conference say, if I fight again. It's been a remarkable career. would be a great way to go out, you know, winning that trilogy against Amanda Serrano. But of course, the lure of a Croke Park fight would be something quite spectacular. You know, she's got a few injuries at the moment. She won't fight again this year, and she may not fight again. But if the Croke Park opportunity presented itself, it would be very difficult for her to turn down. You know, for me, the greatest female fighter of all time, probably one of the greatest sports men or women ever to come from Ireland, and she's an absolute icon and a credit to the sport. So if that's the end of the road, what a career, what a legacy, what a journey. But, you know, I can also see her having another couple of fights. So we'll sit down in a couple of months' time and we'll definitely speak to the sports minister, who's been quite vocal in Ireland, talking about the possibility and the desire to hold a Katie-Taylor fight in Ireland. You know, up in Northern Ireland, September 13th, we're going to have 20,000 there for Crocker against Donovan. So the appetite, you know, all over the world right now for boxing is red hot. And Katie-Taylor at Croke Park would certainly be something that we would never forget.
Eddie, live from New York, looking trim. Thank you so much for the update, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, mate.